Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Gateway to Vietnam Forum. Before we dive into our first order of business, which will be the Vietnam Enterprise Investments Limited, Veil Agm, I have to cover a few housekeeping items. And at the risk of looking like an air hostess, may I point out the emergency exits now, which are at the rear of the room. We hope you can join us for drinks and food later. The courtroom on the left at the rear will be where the food is, and the drinks and lunch will be in the garden afterwards. If you have any questions, ask anybody with a yellow lanyard, but don't ask me because I'll be asking them as well. So, anyhow, now the formal bit. I'm delighted to welcome you to our annual general meeting. I'm informed there's a quorum present in person or by duly appointed proxy. I declare this meeting open. My name is Gordon Lawson. I'm the chair of the board of directors of Veil. And again, this sounds a bit like a Eurovision Song Contest. I know that online is V. Peterson, who is one of the directors based in Melbourne, Australia, and Tella Ben Siali, who's one of the non-execs based in Hong Kong, and Suk Ling Hao, who is one of the non-execs based in Singapore. And also at the front, we have Dominic Scriven, who will be doing the main presentation later with Tuan Le. And we have Sarah Arkle, who will be the chair from next Monday. And we will have Charles Cade, but his train has broken down, so he will be coming in later on. And we also have Lisa Hayward, who is the Dragon Capital Markets, who's going to act as the meeting secretary. All shareholders should have received the audited financial statements of the company for the year ended 31st December 23, together with the auditors and directors' reports. There are spare copies in that room there if you need any, and I'm happy to give you an autograph if anybody wants one. We've received the following valid appointments of proxies and corporate representatives for the meeting, and currently Computershare nominees represented by myself as chair have received a total of 135,258,009 shares. Before I turn to the questions listed in the notice of the meeting, the board would like to give shareholders the opportunity to ask any questions on matters that relate to the business of the meeting. And we can also answer any questions afterwards if you have any questions. Do you have any questions, anybody? That's fine. You can always ask us afterwards. Right, if there's no questions, we'll move on to the business of the meeting. This year, there are 10 resolutions which are explained in the notice of the meeting. The voting on these resolutions will be conducted on a poll, and in order not to delay the business of the meeting and the presentations, polls will be conducted after all the resolutions have been put to the meeting. Resolutions 1 to 8 to be voted on today are ordinary business of the meeting, and it's an ordinary resolution, so they require a simple majority of 50% of those voting. Resolutions 9 and 10 are special business of the meeting. Resolution 9 is an ordinary resolution, thus requiring a simple 50% of those voting, whereas Resolution 10 is a special resolution and requires a majority of more than 75%. Resolution 1 is to receive and adopt the audited financial statements of the company for the year ended 31st December 2023, together with the auditors and directors' report thereon, if passed. To that end, I lay before the meeting the financial statements with the reports, which have all been sent to shareholders. Are there any questions on this resolution? I now propose Resolution 1 as an ordinary resolution to be put to the vote. Resolution 2 is to reappoint KPMG Limited of Vietnam as auditor of the company and to authorize the board to fix their remuneration if passed. Are there any questions in relation to this resolution? I formally propose Resolution 2 as an ordinary resolution. We turn to resolutions 3 to 8, which is the election of the directors. Resolution 3 is to elect Charles Cade as a director of the company if passed. Are there any questions? No? I propose Resolution 3 as an ordinary resolution and put it to the vote. Resolution 4 is to re-elect V. Peterson as the director of the company. Are there any questions in relation to this appointment? No. I propose Resolution 4 as an ordinary resolution and put it to the vote. Resolution 5 is to re-elect Tella Ben Siali as the director of the company. Are there any questions regarding this resolution? I now propose Resolution 5 as an ordinary resolution. Resolution 6 is to re-elect Suk-Ling Loh as the director of the company. Any questions regarding this resolution? I propose Resolution 6 as an ordinary resolution. Resolution 7 is to re-elect Sarah Arkle as the director of the company. Are there any questions in regard to this resolution? I now propose Resolution 7 as an ordinary resolution and put it to the vote. Resolution 8 is to re-elect Dominic Scriven as the director of the company. Are there any questions regarding this resolution? I now propose Resolution 8 as an ordinary resolution. Resolution 9 is a special business to vote that the proposed investment policy set out in the Appendix 2 to the circular shareholders dated the 30th of May 2024 and is hereby approved and adopted as the investment policy of the company in substitution for and to the exclusion of all previous investment policies of the company. I now propose, before I propose, are there any questions regarding this resolution? I now propose Resolution 9 as an ordinary resolution and put it to the vote. Resolution 10 is a special resolution to vote that the company be generally and unconditionally authorised to make market purchases of its ordinary shares. Are there any, before I put this resolution before, are there any questions? No. I now propose Resolution 10 as a special resolution and put it to the poll. As all the resolutions have now been put to the meeting, we will now move to conduct a poll on the resolutions. On a poll, each shareholder present at the meeting is entitled to one vote for every share registered in their name. Corporate representatives may vote the shares over which they have authority, and each duly appointed proxy is entitled to one vote for every share they represent. Abstentions will not be counted here. A number of shareholders have already been sent a proxy to the company appointing me to vote on their behalf. We will therefore vote their shares in accordance with the relative instructions. Shareholders who've already lodged a proxy card need not complete a poll card unless they wish to change their vote, in which case they are required to inform Lisa Hayward on the proposed changes. I direct that the company's meeting secretary to be Lisa Hayward, who will distribute poll cards to shareholders, which they should complete and sign as indicated. If you do not know the number of shares you hold, this may be left blank. Has anybody required any cards or pens? That makes life a lot easier. So everybody has, all the votes are now in. I can now announce that all the resolutions have been passed. This information will be announced to the Regulatory News Service and will be available on the company's website quite soon. Anyway, thank you all for attending. It concludes the formal components of the 2024 AGM. And I'll now pass you over to Dominic and Twan Lei, who are going to do the presentations.
Stay if you wish.
Last but not least, that is Charles Cade, who's one of the directors.
Thank you very much, Gordon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dominic, as Gordon kindly introduced. And I'm here with some colleagues from Dragon. So there's Thuy-Anh, and there's Steve, and there's Rachel. Thuy-Anh and Steve are joining Rachel to be based here in London to build out a bit of Dragon and Veil's investment contacts with you all. I see lots of old faces, but also a lot of new faces today. So a very warm welcome. What we'd like to do is spend 20 minutes or so talking about Vietnam. I will talk about some sort of macro stuff, and then the one you really want to hear is Twan here, who's the portfolio manager in charge. He's been with Dragon for 18 years, who will be talking about the investment and the portfolio and some of the holdings. And then we've got time for questions, and I would encourage anyone to ask questions. So thanks to you all for being here. And I think, as Gordon said, we do have lunch at the end, so please stay around for that, or go early if you want to have lunch. And thanks to Radnor, who've brought some of their contacts here, and thanks also to Jefferies, broker to the company, and thanks also to Warwick, who's here, chairman of KPMG Vietnam and Cambodia. So if anybody's got any questions on the audit side, Warwick will be here. So let me talk for a few minutes about what's going on in Vietnam. Oh no, I'm supposed to start with this one, which is Dragon. This is a firm that as you can see, we're in our 30th year. I thought, you know, that's quite a lot for a career, isn't it? 30 years. But then, of course, I realized this company started in 1403. So it makes you feel a little humble. Anyway, this is what we do. We visit 300 different companies a year, or we have 300 company meetings. We have 200 people on the ground. We cover 180 stocks. There are 1,500 stocks in Vietnam, but many of them are very small. So this takes about 90% of the size of the stock market. 18 research analysts and 12 portfolio managers, of whom Tuan had 4 on his team managing Veil, which we'll talk about in a bit. And you can see Veil is the most important part of what we do at Dragon. It's our flagship. It's been going for 24 years. And so it deserves every bit of our attention. Sorry, just while talking about 30 years, I just preempt perhaps a question that somebody might ask, which is why Mr. Putin was in Hanoi last week, given the tense tensions around the world. So we have been asked this, so I thought I'd volunteer an answer. I think we all know Vietnam's history, you know, stuff with the French, stuff with the Americans, stuff with the Cambodians, stuff with the Chinese. And by 1980, Vietnam had a horrible time, and it didn't really have any friends except for the Soviet Union. So from 1980 until 1994, the only friend Vietnam had in the world was the USSR. And, you know, most of Vietnam's elite would have studied in the USSR. Half the Politburo studied in the USSR. Half of Vietnam's billionaires studied in the USSR. I was a student in Hanoi in the early 90s. And at that time, the US led an embargo. So the World Bank, the IMF, the ADB, and the UN, any of these people, none of these people could do anything in Vietnam. They were barred, embargoed, sanctioned. So when I was a student, I lived on Russian butter and bread made with Russian wheat and with Russian jam. And I drove a East German motorbike. And if I wanted a taxi, you know, I got into a Lada. I didn't really have enough money to get into a Volga, because the Volgas are really posh Russian cars. So you can see that everyone who's got a few years in Vietnam understands very clearly about the friendship that came from Russia. Vietnam runs its policy, and I think this is Madam Tu from the embassy here, so she will no doubt correct me on anything I'm saying that's wrong. Vietnam's approach is not to have enemies. And the core of this is what some people call bamboo diplomacy. It's very strong at the root, but it's flexible. And so Vietnam last year had official state visits from both President Biden and President Xi of China. I think it's the only country in the world to have greeted both people. And so really, it was no surprise when President Putin visited Vietnam. The comment from the Vietnamese foreign ministry was that this is all in the big picture of Vietnam's foreign policy. And while there was a lot of noise in media before Putin arrived, a day and a half after he left, the US Undersecretary of State was in Vietnam, declaiming that US-Vietnamese relationship had never been stronger. So there you go. That's bamboo diplomacy. We see some bamboos over lunch. You know, the story of Vietnam is not a new story, really. I mean, take that, you know, there I was eating, you know, Russian bread. And look now, this is an economy that is a serious player on the world stage. And these are the 4 driving themes, and Tuan and his colleagues will be trying to invest in these themes. You can see these are some of the companies. So the first is a big chain move in the supply chain. That's foreign investment. That's 5% of GDP every year. So to transpose that to the UK economy, that would be equivalent to $150 billion of foreign investment every year. I don't actually know what FDI in the UK is. Similarly, infrastructure, it's a similar amount. That's the equivalent of, one HS2 every year being invested by the government. Strong growth in middle class, and of course, following on from all of those, urbanization. Urbanization rate 42% in Vietnam. It's 84% in this country, just by comparison. And of course, here's the core of it all: is a population of 100 million. Vietnam, if it were in Europe, would be the biggest country, of course, but it's not. And the average age, 33. That's a little bit higher than it was. I think the UK average is like 40 something, maybe. But this is clearly the bulk of the population coming into spending, families, first homes, etc. These are the PISA scores. What we didn't put is that the UK's above Vietnam. There we go. Nice. Well done, UK. But you can see Vietnam on its maths, science, and English scores is pretty competitive with its neighbors. Those are the Southeast Asian countries. So here's that supply chain shift. Now, Vietnam has its biggest trading partner is China, with whom it has a $60 billion a year deficit. And it balances that with its second biggest trading partner, which is the United States, with whom Vietnam has a $100 billion trade surplus. And all of that's happening here. It's factories moving from China to Vietnam. And actually, in the old days, they used to be down here more in the south. But right now, all the action is in the north of Vietnam, as of course, because you may know what's just above Vietnam is Guangzhou, Guangdong province, also 100 million people, which is where Deng Xiaoping went in 1979 and effectively launched the modern Chinese industrial miracle. And so really, people who've spent 30 years, 40 years manufacturing China are moving just a little bit further south, and they've got all of their supply chains. And there was a really good example of this last weekend. Tuan put this slide together. I was in Wales with my sister. That's consumer in Wales. That's my sister. She bought a doorbell with a camera, which was delivered by Amazon one day later. And when I looked at the back, that's the doorbell. When I looked at the back, I saw that the owner of this product is a British company. The doorbell's designed in California. The revenues are booked through a company in Luxembourg. Hello, what's going on there? The parts are made in China, and it was assembled in Vietnam. Now, how do we know the parts are made in China? Because interestingly, it doesn't say anything about China on there. And the reason, this is a massive guess on my part, because you couldn't get the parts to make that anywhere else but China. But the reason China's name is not on here is because of the current geopolitical situation. And this is probably a Chinese factory that's assembling in Vietnam, but it's taking its parts from China. So there you have the global supply chain in Wales. Infrastructure. It's a bit difficult to talk about infrastructure other than showing pictures of things being built. But I was with the Minister of Finance of Vietnam in Japan, and he said that the Vietnamese government plans to deliver 1,000 kilometers a year of high-speed high-speed expressway every year until 2030. And that gives you a measure. You see, we've had really constant levels of investment rising, but in these years, for various reasons, activity was muted. You can see here that the level of disbursement has increased quite dramatically. Middle class. This is rebased to the beginning of reforms, T, as you can see, and we've plotted there Vietnam, China, South Korea, and Thailand. You can see that Vietnam is following very close to the Chinese, possibly even heading towards the South Korean curve and moving ahead of the Thai curve, and that is in income per person. And here's just a drill down to show the level of political engagement. You know, some people question whether there's been some political moving around in Vietnam. Some people are questioning whether the government is losing its focus on economics. Well, here you can see the Prime Minister deeply embedded in investor relations with foreign investors. And this is, you know, strangely, last year, Biden flew in, and he and the General Secretary signed a special relationship, which is strange when you consider the past, and it puts Vietnam and the US as their sort of best equal friends. But that's the political stuff. What we're all going is, where's the business? And this is one area where everybody's looking. Of course, semiconductors. We've all read Chip Wars, I hope. Fascinating book. And you understand the enormous importance of the semiconductor industry. So Vietnam is positioning itself in OSAT, outsourced semiconductor assembly and testing. And you can see there's various bits of this part of the supply chain underway. All of this based on growth with stability. So what do you see there? GDP growth, that's okay. Stable currency, that's against the US dollar, sort of okay, better than the peers. The reason for that is we've got a decent current account surplus. Those are the COVID years, but you can see current account surplus rising, pictured in the FX reserves. And here's an interesting one. This is the level of public debt. So this, in Western economies, this is the huge issue right now, isn't it? Public sector debt is unsustainable levels. I just checked, the UK's public sector debt is 100% of GDP. Vietnam, as you can see there, the dark green is just under 40% of GDP. That's despite all of this investing in infrastructure, right? All of that's public investment in infrastructure. So we have a very under-borrowed government. And this is actually somewhat similar to what you find in China as well. So there we go, a few numbers. Size of Vietnam's economy, more or less $500 billion. As we know, the UK economy is about $3 trillion. So on a dollar basis, the Vietnamese economy is 1/6 of the size of the UK, with 1/3 more population. So there we go. Now, over to Tuan, right? You're going to come up here and talk to us about the market. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my first time to be here in London. It's a very nice city. I'm going to provide some update with the Veil portfolio to all of you. First, about the equity market outlook. You know that for over the last 10 years, Vietnam capital market has grown and developed significantly. Our total market cap already 275 billion, grow 5 times over the last 10 years, with companies over 600 new listings during the time. We have the company with market cap over 1 billion, grow 5 times, and the daily turnover in the market right now is about around $1 billion, much higher than 10 years before. In Vietnam market, we have various products, offshore ETF, onshore ETF, future index, cover warrant, and it's very notable to talk about the refunding issue in Vietnam. In the last couple of weeks, the Ministry of Finance and State Security Commission has met with brokerage firm and discussed about the third version of the circular to remove the refunding requirement. This is the last obstacle for the FTSE benchmark to add Vietnam into the EM list, and we expect that it will happen in September 2025. How it is meaningful with the Vietnam market? You know that people now the frontier market is no longer relevant for Vietnam. People now looking at Vietnam as the EM market, and over last 5 years, we have seen a net outflow 4 out of 5 years, with the total net outflow of $5 billion. So when the EM upgrading happen, it will it will reverse the outflow, and we expect fund that follow the active or passive fund that follow the FTSE benchmark will pour money into Vietnam. We estimate $2 to $3 billion will come to Vietnam, and this will definitely will re-rate the valuation for the country, and which is already at very attractive valuation, with rise to book one standard deviation below the historical average, and with outlook for 2024 after 2 years of lagging, we expect 18.6% earning growth for the year. All this come back to the recovery thesis for the equity market in 2024. It's based on recovery macro environment with support easing monetary policy and recovering of credit growth, which is an important indicator to me. The credit growth in Vietnam start the year with quite slow number, but it is accelerating, and we expect by end of June the credit growth in Vietnam will achieve 5 to 6% and complete the full year at around 15%, which is stimulating all the economic activities. We have seen the recovery in manufacturing and consumption sector, and all of that allow us to forecast a 9 to 12% growth in the top line. At the bottom line, profit will be accelerate at a higher pace compared with the revenue, thanks to profit margin expansion and the reduction of interest expenses. About the market forecast, we expect a double-digit growth for ABS growth and a reasonable and attractive valuation. Coming into our portfolio, I have met a few investors during last week, and one question they normally ask me about how many companies I intend to have in my portfolio. They heard about I'm going to add new names and a few mid caps into portfolio. My answer is very simple and straightforward. As long as our team with 4 PM and our biggest team of analysts with 18 senior analysts, if they can cover well and be on top of the new investee, I'm willing to take more holding into the portfolio. We currently have 39 names in the portfolio, and I'm willing to have new ideas, new investment case, new good company to reflect more the dynamic of the Vietnam economy. And in Dragon Capital, in order to streamline our investment process and put everything in a framework, we have built a platform that we call IRIS, the Resource and Intelligence System. Here all the analysts, all the PM, every time they go out to meet companies and site visit and gather every insightful information on the market, they will put all into the platform and with analyze it with valuation, with rating, with recommendation, and in a timely sequence. The IRIS platform, we have multi-function for research, for PM, for risk management, for compliance, and also ESG. ESG is integrated into our system, and through the platform, we can screen and we can scoring relating to ESG. About the portfolio, the ultimate goal for Veil portfolio as a long-term investment trust is to bring all the investment team of Vietnam into our portfolio. We are finding good companies that can contribute to benefit from all that investment teams, and build good exposure with them and stay long enough with them. This is our ultimate goal. Over time, we have some tactical allocation that to adapt with market the dynamic market or revealing market trends, and we have stock selection, the bottom-up approach. All that consideration will come up with our portfolio. Currently, our portfolio focus on banking sector with 36% in the AUM. Banking is the backbone of the economy in Vietnam. It's kind of the filter where all the economic policy will come down and land to the real economy. So we can say banks are the first beneficiary of all the supportive economic policy. Bank currently make up 39% in the VN index, but it contributes nearly 60% of earnings. And this year we forecast 15-60% in EPS role for banking on average. In Vietnam, we have top 4 SOCB, state-owned commercial bank. Then we have tier 1 private bank, the high quality banks. Then we have the tier 2 private bank, a bit lower in quality. Our portfolio focus on the top tier 1 private banks. Consumption for 2024 is one of our big theme. We has a strong belief in the solid recovery in consumption, and in this sector, it's benefit from the rising middle class and the shifting from traditional wet market to the modern retail. And in this segment, we have big position in a company like Mobile World, which is the number 1 retailer in Vietnam. We have built a decent position in FPT retail this year, and we have one company in the jewelry sector. All these segments in retail sector are quite fragmented. So for first mover and those companies that have the strong competence, they can have a high chance to be the sector champion. In the property market is, there are some similarity between Vietnam market and China market, property market, but there is some key difference here. In Vietnam over last few years, due to some delay in project approval, there were not enough project came to the market. So actually the situation in Vietnam is the supply is below the demand. And with the urbanization rate is still 42%, there's still room for the demand side in the property market. And we have 50 developer in the VN index, but in our portfolio, we have only 5 to 6 companies. We focus on high quality developers. Our condition to pick developer for our portfolio: number 1, good land bank; number 2, good legal status; 3, financial capacity; 4 is the development expertise. And these conditions were made very long time ago with our team, but they are still now very valid. But there is some adjustment because recently we have a new amended land law, and the outcome from that very short summary is that before companies that acquire land bank, they can find a good piece of land, they compensate, they convert it from agricultural land to residential land. They pay some tax to the government, and they gain a big difference in prices. Now with the new amended land law, it's no longer relevant because developer will need to pay the much higher tax to the government at the market-driven valuation. It means that in our condition, we will shift more from good land bank to companies that have the expertise and the track record in development, companies that can add good value on the land bank. And in our portfolio, one of our topic is Khang Dien. Khang Dien is our number one in the sector. Khang Dien has all that condition because they has a very good record in development, and they very prudent in developing projects, and they they own a very big land bank in Ho Chi Minh City through very many years that they acquire land bank, and they clear all the compensation, they accelerating the legal status, paperwork. Within Ho Chi Minh City only, they have the largest land bank and far above every other developer in the country. Infrastructure, we focus on companies that benefit from infrastructure spending and construction activity. We have big weight in Hòa Phát, the number one steel co in Vietnam. Technology sector, we have one company only that represent for the whole sector. We will come to FPT right after this slide. For Veil portfolio, we see that our top 10 holding make up 60% of the portfolio. We still very concentrated on our strong conviction. The valuation is similar with the top 80 under our coverage, but at much higher EPS growth, 24% compared with 18.6%. And we focus on banks, consumer and materials and technology sector. Since February, when our team managed the portfolio, we have done quite a few actions to make the portfolio more diversified and balanced. We have reduced and trimmed and removed a few holdings that the risk profile we consider no longer valid for the portfolio. We top up in companies we like, in consumer, in bank, in real estate, and I can say that although there's still work to be done in coming time, we are not very far from the portfolio we expect for Veil. Mobile World, Mobile World was among the top 5 detractors in 2023 in our portfolio. All the retail companies in Vietnam experienced a very difficult year in 22-23 after the COVID time, and but Mobile World, they took that opportunity, that chance to did many writing, decisive and correct strategy to consolidate the market, and now they come back in 2024 with a much higher, stronger position. They have a bigger market share. They become dominant player in the market. All the manufacturing or supplier, they want to sell electronics products to Vietnam market at big volume. The first company they think of will be Mobile World, because Mobile World, they have a very strong distribution system. It helped the company improve the gross margin from 17 to 18% to over 20% in the first quarter this year. And for a company with $2 billion in revenue, 1% change in profit margin is very meaningful. it helped the company have a huge jump in earnings, of course, from a low base last year. And the second key factor with Mobile World is Bách Hóa Xanh, the grocery chain of Mobile World. They pursue this business for a long time. They struggle a lot. They incur big losses during the time. But we believe that this year is the time that Mobile World already found the right template, the right model, and the right business, and they have the right team now with Bách Hóa Xanh, and they can achieve break-even this year, and in good case will be profitable this year. And we believe that market cap of Mobile World currently $3.6 billion. Bách Hóa Xanh contribute in valuation is still very modest. This is a business that tap into foodstuff market with the market value of $100 billion. And they are the first mover and now the number one player. They can, it's so big, so for that, for us to say that winner take all, but they will be the dominant player and they will benefit the most from this market. FPT is another strong conviction in our portfolio. It has been in our portfolio for a very long time. It's a very interesting company, technology company in Vietnam. It's rare company that we can confident say that it can achieve 20% earning growth from now for next 3-5 years with high confidence. They have very strong business in outsourcing and education, telecommunication. And for outsourcing, their revenue, global revenue only currently 1 billion, achieved 1 billion last year. And the potential growth for that business is still very big, very large, because it only make up 0.1% of global market in the outsourcing market in terms of the global. So the potential is still very big. Secondly, FPT with the in-depth technology and expertise and knowledge, it allowed them to have to access into new business, new economy like AI, like cloud, like data center, and this is very interesting to retail investor. And they are very excited about that, which led to a very strong performance of FPT in terms of stock performance. So in summary, we can say that Vietnam market, all the investment team remain intact with 2024 as a recovery year with high GDP growth. And the stock market is currently valued at attractive level with strong catalyst with the EM upgrading. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Tuan. One thing Tuan didn't say is that FPT, that big software company that he was talking to us about, wrote the software for the congestion charge in London. I mean, I'm quite sure that's a good thing to mention or not mention. Just a few quick slides to wrap up on Veil, because of course this is where we are all invested, including Dragon, including the board, including myself, including my mum. And as we know, so up here we've got the performance. Veil listed in 2016 LSE. Just out there we had the dragon dance, and as you can see, it's been a sort of generally positive journey. The Veil itself is measured against the Vietnamese index, and you can see we're down on 3 years, but we're up on the other time comparisons. To be absolutely honest, 2022 for us was an appalling year. And we spent, I think Tuan alluded to it, we spent 2023 working very, very hard on our investment process, on our teams, on the way we make decisions, on accountability, on the house views. And it's begun to have good effect. We are, as you can see, pulling the numbers back since the beginning of the year, not least with assistance from brave Tuan and his team. Thank you very much. But you know, the problem we all know about London, and I see Tom there, and he's very, very voluble on this subject on behalf of Jefferies, the investment trust sector is in an awful, awful state. And this is not so much an issue about Vietnam, as I'm sure many of you are investors in trusts. It's issues about the LSE. It's issues about pension funds. It's issues about post-Brexit, et cetera, et cetera. And so the investment trust sector, Veil, where we're all invested, no exception, persistent discounts to NAV. Here's the, this is the share price, and then this is the discount. You can see when we listed, you know, the discount was good. We were sort of somewhere between, you know, -8 to -9, but it's just got worse over the last few years, and this is despite us buying back. That's 22, 23 year to date, $30 million. Our brave colleagues, Jefferies on the buyback, operating the buyback under direction of the board. I think it's fair to say the board has bought back $150 million of shares in the last 4 years. And that's a sign of the board's testament to do what we can to manage the discount. Obviously, strengthening the Dragon team here, having our first physical and online AGM is another measure. And I think it's fair to say the board is looking at all sorts of additional options that might improve this in the next few years. One of those, of course, is squeezing the manager down on fees. This is a global thing, but you can see it's happening here in the case of Veil as well. The dotted line has already been agreed. You'll see it's just in the second half of the year. We are doing our best to be compliant with all of the UK regulations. This is interesting. So when we listed in 2016, there were about 30 shareholders who were all institutions. It was very, as they say, a very lumpy shareholding register. We've now got 40 shareholders owning holdings of more than £5 million. We have 115 shareholders owning more than £1 million and 200 shareholders owning over more than £500,000. That's a big spread, but also look at this. The percentage owned by individual investors has nearly doubled in the last 3 years. This is due to a lot of work that we've been trying to put to make Veil known to the broader investing community. And this is the last slide to show you the board. Sarah, who's sitting over there, said, do we really have to have this photograph? I think we do, to show you this is the board. We take responsibility, all of us, to you, our shareholders. There's V, who's in Australia. V's Vietnamese. There's Entella, who's, I think, in Hong Kong. Entella, I think, originally traces herself to Albania, by Switzerland. And there's Sukling, who's in Singapore. And, of course, Sarah and Charles and Gordon are here. And Gordon didn't mention it, but Gordon's been associated with Veil for a very long time. In fact, so long that he is verging on losing his independence. And so Gordon, in 3 days' time, or 4 days, no, next, when is it, 30th, will be handing over chair to Sarah. So I'd just like to say personal thank you very much, Gordon, and welcome, Sarah. So as ever, we've been talking a bit too long. It's 12:49. There is lunch next door. There's no hurry on that. If there are any questions, could I ask Sarah, Charles, Gordon, would you care to come up here in case there's some questions for directors? And the floor is open, and we do, where is it? We've got a number of colleagues online. Hello, online. Thank you very much indeed. And good Lord, we've got some questions. So please, if anybody has any questions on anything, and even to matters of Vietnamese public policy, we have Miss Tu from the university. Hello, T. from the embassy, Charge from the embassy, who's also here. So if you have a question, please raise your, there's a question there, gentleman there. And I've got some online as well, which is great.
Thank you for your presentation. I noticed, was it Mr. Krimovitz from the State Department plane landed as soon as Mr. Putin's took off? Could you comment on that, please?
Yes. So I made a few comments earlier about the relationship that Vietnam has with the United States and Putin. Well, the official statement from the US was that Mr. Undersecretary's visit had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the visit of President Putin. That's the official line. Do we believe that? But I think the line I did share was that there was a US statement that Vietnam's relationship with the United States, or the United States' relationship with Vietnam is as strong and as robust as it's ever been, and I'm sure that's true. Vietnam has this special, if you think of the geopolitical tensions in the world at the moment, and there's no shortage of them, is there? Very grimly, Vietnam has 4 red telephones with a direct line to Moscow, to Beijing, to Washington, and to Delhi. And there are very few countries that actually have the same quality of red line to as diverse a bunch of superpowers. And Vietnam's worked very, very hard to do that. It's this bamboo diplomacy, very strong at the bottom, but flexible to ensure that, and Vietnam doesn't have, it's got a number of, policies, not to join alliances, not to have foreign bases, etc. It's a very, very resilient, independent country. And we're seeing this more and more in what they call the global south, Indonesia, a lot Turkey, a lot of these countries creating a new layer of diplomatic force. I think Vietnam is one of those. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, gentleman behind. Yes, thank you.
There's obviously been quite a lot publicly about the anti-corruption drives and quite major changes politically in the government. What sort of impact may that have on sort of future investment policy?
Well, don't take this as a glib answer, but I'm going to say not very much, frankly. Vietnam has a political process like every country, like we have here. And that's 5 years, and it rolls around 5 years. And as in every political process, there's a bit of shoving around, and people elbowing as you come up to the deadline. The deadline is the end of next year, and indeed there have been some relatively high-profile resignations and departures. And I know, as you rightly say, that's got into the foreign media, and there's a little bit of interest in what's going on here. But I think our view, in Dragon, we're pretty apolitical, and we invest through the cycles. And our Tuan and his portfolio, I think you confirm, politics doesn't have a very big place in your portfolio, does it? No. And so I think there was a slide up there, growth with stability. That is unquestionably the long-term trend of Vietnam. And I think whoever is in the various seats of power will stick to that long-term agenda. And it's an agenda, we've now got 30 years track record of it. And I don't think that's going to change. Yeah. So I wouldn't be. Yeah. What it does do at the margin is it affects a little bit of sentiment. I mean, not really sentiment for foreign investors, as you can see, because that's still pretty strong. 5% of GDP a year. But some of the points Tuan was alluding to, last year we had a bit of, some consumer confidence issues in the real estate sector, consumer spending. It affects at the margin like that. But I think this year we're coming out of that, actually. Yeah. Gentleman behind, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dominic, you touched on 2022, the performance of the portfolio, and Tuan, you gave the figures for the portfolio makeup, 35-36% in private banking. Given the banking fiasco at the back end of 2022 with SCB, maybe a few short words on how you view the future outlook of the private banking sector and confidence within that sector in Vietnam.
Do you have comments you want to make on the banking sector?
Yes.
Yeah. Why don't you stand up and make some comments on the banking sector? Yeah.
About your question, first we talk about SCB case. Number one is it's big and it's really bad thing happen. But the first thing is that incident was isolated in just one bank, and the SB has stepped in and did what necessary to contain the problem. So now things are under control by the SPV, and it's not contagious to the whole banking system at all. That's the first thing. For the banking system, we still see that although we saw some bumpy and NPL number performing loan search in a couple of times, the overall asset quality of the banking system is still intact, and they have repair. They have had some reparation for that with very strong provision over the last few years. We will see some bank like SOCB bank like BIDV or Vietnamese, they spend half of their earnings for last 3-5 years to provision, to write off all the bad debt. So they have a good reparation for the to contain the problem. And now in 2024, when the credit growth can recover healthily from the low base, we think that this is the recovery at a higher level and with higher quality, and the NPL will be such a bit, but is contained and is on the way to reduce. So we still have very strong belief in the banking sector and the soundness of the banking sector as a whole. The second point is that the property markets as a whole, we already seen some recovery. We saw the recovery since end of last year, and this year for the first Q of 24, we saw 25% increase in transaction volume, and we also saw some price recovery in the secondary market, especially for condominium projects, 15-20% in Hanoi, even higher than that, and 10-15% in Ho Chi Minh City. This is thanks to number one, the very low interest rate and easier condition to borrow money from bank, from the real demand by people, and the confidence that people think that the land price in Vietnam will not go lower due to the new amended land law. With a healthier property market, the NPL in the banking system will be resolved easier and has a good base to be addressed. So we still have very strong view about the banking system as a whole. Thank you.
I want to take a question from online too. So what are your thoughts on the potential impact of US trade and sanctions versus China? And do you see secondary sanctions on Vietnamese companies? This is a very interesting question. I alluded earlier to the fact that Vietnam has a trade surplus of $100 billion with the United States last year. That's the third largest trade surplus of countries after China, number one, and Mexico, number two. And we recall that President Trump last time round, defined people who are manipulating their currency. And one of the issues is a large trade surplus, and another of the issues is a total current account surplus, and the third is do they manipulate their currency? Well, I don't think Vietnam manipulates its currency, but on two of the three, that is a current account surplus, which is more than 2.8% of GDP. Vietnam is 5.8, and on a trade surplus that is more than $15 billion. Well, 100 is obviously bigger than 15. So, if Trump were to be back in charge, I think he'd look at Vietnam and he'd go, look, guys, do something. Otherwise, we're going to have some tension. And I think what would happen, because Trump is apparently, people, say very transactional, I think Vietnam needs new airplanes, might need some new defense equipment. So I think there's possibly, trade deals to be done there. But of course, whether it's Mr. Biden or Mr. Trump, there's this other aspect of the China. And you remember that slide I put up there about my sister's doorbell. You can see people are already making steps. And of course, one of the big things in Mexico, in Turkey, in Poland, in Vietnam, is these countries are benefiting from geopolitics, from the tensions, from the moving around of the supply chains. And which is one of our investment themes, of course, one of the key points or one of the key advantages of Vietnam is it's right next door to China, right next door to Guangdong province. And people share the same work ethics. So if you're a Korean manufacturer in China and you decide that you want to build your next factory in Vietnam, it's not going to be difficult at all to reconfigure your manufacturing supply chain. So I think that broadly there is a lot of benefit for Vietnam. It's one of the main reasons that the economy is growing from this trade tension thing. But there are also within that a set of concerns that we must monitor. I think it's possible to mitigate those, but it might require some serious trade negotiations. I'll take another question. Yes, sorry, gentleman there, and then I've got another one here on climate change.
Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to ask about what you said, the updated investment process following the disappointing 2022. I remember a few years ago in the annual report, there was a small note saying that there were plans to track the benchmark more. And so I was just wondering if the new process involved more active management in comparison.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. So, Tuan, you may have a couple of comments, but let me just go back to investment process. So, we've done a lot of work in 2020. 2022, what we had was a bunch of, we had some quite big holdings that perhaps, there maybe was some emotion in some of the holdings we had, if I can put it that way. And so what we've done is we've banged our whole process on the head, from research, ESG, of course, but through the PM and in particular risk management. So we have now a sort of, Dragon has always been a set of best ideas, but we've actually focused on what that means. So that means we have a 180 stocks in the universe, but the CIO will create a reference portfolio of which pulls our main macro themes into one through the market into one macro. Now PMs can obviously, they have freedom to move within that, but we have fairly extensive risk controls on, for example, how much they can deviate from the CIO's reference matrix, what's the active share they can have, turnover, size, overweights. Yeah, so you can maybe talk to some of those, but within Veil, of course, because it's an investment trust, we have a number of advantages. So we can invest longer term, we can afford to be a little less liquid, and the holdings can be a little bit larger. And we also, of course, as you know, we have a debt facility. I think it's $175 million. So we can use leverage if we need to fine tune the trading. So those are some of the aspects. And I think, you know, the numbers, I look at the numbers every day. I'm sure Tuan looks, I'm sure many of us look at the numbers every day. They've been improving since, very much since the beginning of the year. Do you have any specific comments about Veil and performance in investment process? Yeah, go.
You know, it's always boring to say something about process and kind of procedures. I just want to say a few key points. In the past, we always have a concentration on the strong conviction, and it's still very true now for our Veil portfolio. We want to find strong conviction, and we have big position on those companies. But between the concentration and strong conviction and over concentration is a thin line. So I will be very mindful about that. For example, in our portfolio, our top one holding is Hòa Phát. It's the company I have very confident with the management. I like the company a lot for a few key things. Number one, many years ago, when they launched the new Trung Quốc complex in the central of Vietnam, it's a multi-billion dollar project, and their mindset at that time was to build that complex not to compete with the local producer, but to have the ability to compete with mid-player in China. So they have a strong expertise. Second thing is they have very strong interest alignment. They talked to us when I met the chairman. He shared with us that all the founder member of Hòa Phát only invested in Hòa Phát. They do not have outside business. It's strong interest alignment and many other things. This year, 70% earning growth. So very good company. And if you build a portfolio from scratch, it's a must-have in the portfolio. However, whether we want to maintain a concentration at 10% over up and down cycle is a question, because that is more or less still commodity linked company. So it has cycle, some 3 year good, 3 year bad. So the way with our investment process, I will consider many risk aspects to maintain a reasonable weighting in the holding. I will not say I have strong conviction and I hold 10% of a commodity company throughout all the up and down cycle. It's not the way I will do. So that's what I will make with our portfolio. And I don't like the way that a big portfolio is dictated by a few holdings. I want a more diversified thing. But again, I want to emphasize that we still aim to have big exposure on strong conviction. That's about.
It's fine. It's fine.
Thank you.
Fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just 200 people on the ground, 30 analysts and managers. What do the others do? The 170. Yes. Okay. So 30 analysts and managers, and include 5 on the investment committee, 10 on a debt team, a middle office, 5, a risk management department of 5. We have a local operation, which is very interesting for Dragon. You know, it's not in the deck here, but one of the great reasons for faith in the future of the Vietnamese stock market is the growth of domestic savings, the growth of savings into investments, and people needing, and this is a function of GDP per capita. GDP per capita is about $5,000, but you know, generally people think that once it gets close to 8, 9, 10, people have a need to, they no longer have their money on deposit in the bank earning a small amount of interest. They need investment solutions. And in Ho Chi Minh City, the urban 42% is urbanized. Now their incomes per capita are probably close to 7, 8, 9. In Ho Chi Minh City, where we are, it'll be over 10. And you see this, people now becoming investors. So we have I think about 200,000 Vietnamese investors, and we have an app. And of course, if you have, you know, if you have investors and you have a sort of retail presence and you have an app, then you need a huge, great tech department. So in fact, our investment department's the biggest department, but the second biggest department is tech. Yeah, so that's where the other 170 do. Are you always, okay, are you always fully invested? And no, we're not always fully invested. How much, yes, you are, sorry, always fully invested. How much debt do you, how much leverage do you have at the moment? 0. Okay, so 0 at the moment. But if you borrow, what do you pay? What's your interest rate? Sonia Plus. Right, okay. And is the Vietnamese economy seeing a fundamental shift from south to north? And if so, what are the implications? I touched loosely on that. Really, we're seeing the FDI now more concentrated in the north, particularly in electronics, in semiconductors, that sort of thing. But FDI is still quite strong in the south in areas like food, garments, textiles. I mean, Nike, for example, is a huge manufacturer. Half of their clothing, more than half of their clothing, comes from Vietnam, and most of that is in the south. I think our chefs are hard at work next door, so perhaps we should think about winding up. But is there another question here at all? No. Wonderful. Oh yes, sorry, there is one question. Yes.
Yeah. Could you comment more on the share buyback policy of the board, and should the board be considering something a bit more radical than the daily drip feed that seems to be taking place? Doesn't strike me that you're narrowing the discount.
I think that's a fair comment. Would one of you directors, would one of the directors like to? I think.
Work. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, clearly the discount is something that, being a Sadgit, I look at it first thing every morning, and Sarah will be doing that next Monday onwards. But no, it's something we discuss all the time. We've considered a variety of measures, and I know we're doing what everybody else is doing, which is increased marketing, holding the AGM in London, and thank you all for coming. And we decided earlier this year to be slightly more aggressive on the buyback, and as Dominic pointed out, we have, you know, we're putting into action what we discuss. And I think last year we bought whatever it was, several percentage points, and I think, you know, we're accreting NAV by doing so. I think our share buybacks last year added something like $10 million worth of value to the NAV, or you know, just under 70 basis points or something like that. And as Dominic alluded to, we are looking at, we are considering and doing work on various other things.
I mean, the framework for, as I think many of us see it, is that next year there is a continuation vote for Veil. And obviously there are a lot of continuation votes for investment trusts this year. And we have on the board, you know, 3 people deep in I didn't introduce properly that Sarah, new chairman, many years chairing investment trusts, and Charles, for many, many years, worked at Numis, looking at and picking apart investment trusts. So I think we've got a lot of bench strength, looking at the investment trust sector and preparing for that continuation vote. And of course, as we know, continuation votes, it's not like 51%. Under the London rules, if you have, I think, is it 10% or 20% against a particular motion, the board is expected to constructively engage, i.e. listen to that vote. But, I think the key to a discount management policy is find new investors. That's the absolute key. Can't buy back your own shares forever. So what we've got to do is look around this big world and find where the investors are. Now, from a Dragon point of view, so I mentioned Veil is the biggest part of Dragon as the manager of our lives, but we have other bits of our lives, and the fastest growing bits of our lives have been in Asia. So we've had great success in raising funds for investing in Vietnam from Taiwan, from Thailand, and from Singapore, and in the past from Korea. So, and obviously the one I haven't mentioned there is China. So to me, I'm just only one person, but my thoughts would be that we as a company, we need to look where are the people who understand Vietnam, who don't think it's too far away, and who have money to invest. I think that's going to be our what we've got to do one way or another. Right, I think we said 1:15 for lunch and it's 1:16. Can I, on behalf of the board and on behalf of Dragon colleagues, can I thank you all very, very much indeed. The show doesn't stop now. You basically move that way and see a physical representation of Vietnam's bamboo diplomacy with a little bit of lunch. Thank you very much indeed for attending today.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That now concludes today's annual general meeting. We'll now redirect you to provide your feedback. Good afternoon to you all.